Hello and welcome to the Halloween edition of my Draw With Me series. Today we're going to do a pattern called Draq by the artist Simona Cordara. I'm doing a riff on this pattern, which will make it a little easier for kids, but I'm also going to include some different ways to embellish this pattern, and I'm going to show you how to do it in black and white and also in color. So there's going to be a little something for everybody here. So first, let me just walk you through the tools that you're going to see me use. I have a Zentangle card here. You can see I was testing some colored pencils on this before I started recording. So I have my Zentangle card. I use a Micron pen while I'm recording just because it has a sturdier tip, but a Micron 01 or 02 or even an 03 might work fine for you. I have my trusty Tortillon. And I have an 8B sketch pencil, but any soft sketch pencil will work for this project. In addition, I also have just a small handful of colored pencils here. I'm going to make my the main part of my little Draq shape kind of a purpley and pink tone. And I'm going to add some green in. This is Halloween after all, so we want to use kind of like creepy colors. And then I have a white pencil that I'm going to use for blending. And that's it. Those are all the tools that you're going to see me use. So before we get started, why don't we just take a moment and get ourselves centered, get our tools in a convenient place to work with so you can easily reach them. Take a few breaths. Get focused in on this project that we're going to do. Think about something that we're grateful for today. For me, I'm grateful to have some time to sit and draw with you. And when you're ready, go ahead and pick up your pencil. And we're going to start with 4 dots, one in each corner of our card. If you do not have an art card to work with, you can just as easily do this on a piece of art paper. And then I'm going to connect those dots and create a border. And I'm just doing this very lightly. And we're going to move on to our string. Now the string is actually going to serve as a guideline for our pattern today. So I'm going to start not all the way up in the corner, but a little ways in from the top corner. You can see here I have my card kind of sitting at the diagonal, like this corner is like pointed right at me, and this is right away. So I have my card on a diagonal, and I'm going to do a gentle S shape. And then I'm going to come right back up to where I started, and I'm going to do another S shape, and I'm going to do this in the air so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So like it's going to create, I'm trying to create a little bit of a belly. And this is just a guideline, so as we get started drawing our actual pattern, you won't have to follow these pencil lines exactly, but this will just kind of give you a direction to go. Okay, with that I'm going to put my pencil down and I am picking up my pen. Somewhere towards the middle of this shape, and I'm kind of aiming at like one of the wider areas. So like here-ish looks good to me. So you're going to find a wide part of your shape that you made. And you're either going to trace this, or in my case, I'm going to put like an arc so you can kind of still see here's the pencil line and here's the pen line. So I'm just using this, like I said, as a guideline. And I'm going to come across, I'm going to turn this just a little. I'm going to come across and I'm going to do that in opposite arc. So kind of like parentheses, very gentle. And now I'm going to connect the top of this arc to the top of this arc with a gentle arc that goes outwards. And I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom edge. So what you end up with is it's kind of an oval shape that's been kind of smooshed. So now I'm going to work my way up to the top point. So I'm going to come up a little ways, and I'm going to do an arc that starts here and lands right on the top line of this first shape that I made. And I'm going to come across and do the same thing. And then I'm going to connect the top. So now the goal is to make this a little smaller. So now I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to come in and connect it. Come in again. Now you can see how the pencil line is kind of going off. It doesn't matter. That's all going to disappear by the time we're done. And you may have room for another one, but I still need to get my little claw in at the top. So I'm going to start above, and I'm going to do an arc. And I'm going to start at that same point, and I'm going to do another arc down. So I end up with what looks kind of like a claw. Depending on whatever you're designing with this, you could do just this much and just kind of have a half. But I'm going to show you a whole, the whole thing. So now I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to do the same process again, and now I'm going to arc it. So this line arced this way, so that part of the S. So now I'm going to bring it up this way. So starting again, same thing, going to the top of that initial shape that I drew, putting those arcs in and connecting it. Do that again, and I'm going to get them increasingly smaller. Now this one I have a little more room. And then put my claw at the end. So you end up with something that looks like a weird worm with claws going out of both sides of it. So some things you can do if you want, if you find, so like in this one, I have some of these spots are between my segments are a little wider or bigger than others. You could just leave them because the next step is going to actually kind of smooth some of that out. But if you want, you can corner them. So what you could do is come up and put a tiny little arc between them and color that in. Just fill it in. And this smooths it out. And some of these spots you might not need any. And some of them you might feel like you need a lot. All right, so one optional thing that you could do here, and if you're using color, I don't recommend doing this. But if you're staying with a black and white version of this, this is a fun way to kind of round things out. I am going to, and you're going to just have to pick whichever direction you want. I'm going to do a very slight arc. I'm going to start at the edge of my segment, and I'm going to do a slight arc in like that. So I'm bringing it in maybe a third of the way. And then I'm going to do a few. And you can, so I'm actually kind of staying, but not perfectly, parallel with the edges. So you can see like this side I kind of arced a little towards my left, and this side I arced a little towards my right. I'll flip it over. I'm going to do this on this side. If you choose to do this, you have to do all of them, or else it looks kind of weird. And so I'm just going to do, now the rest of these going this way, I'll arc towards my left. So this middle one has an arc going in both directions. These all have just that one arc, just the way it gets stacked. So getting it started is a little tricky, but the rest of it is pretty easy to deal with. You can, as you're doing this, decide if you want to make all these little lines the same length. You could vary. I'm not doing this on the claw, by the way. You could vary. So like you could do like one long, one short, one long, one short, like that. Since I started with all mine the same, I'm going to keep them all that way. So this is a way to round things out, and when you shade this, this is just going to kind of deepen the shadow of your shape here. As I do this, I'm keeping a very gentle grip on my pen. I don't care if my lines are a little wiggly, because we're really kind of creating a shadow anyway, so it doesn't have to be like perfectly straight or perfectly arced. Like I said, this is optional. If you are planning on using colored pencils, don't do this. It just kind of muddies things up when you're using the color, and the color kind of, especially if you are really solid in your fill, it kind of just goes over it, so it's kind of a waste of time to do it. All right, so our little sort of dragon creature needs wings, so that's the next thing that we're going to add to this shape. So I'm going to work from, I'm just looking here to just decide which, okay, so how you're going to decide where you're going to start from. We're going to start on either side of this middle shape, the first shape that we created. And we are going to arc the lines one way or the other. And you just have to kind of decide how much space you have on your card. Like one side of my card has more room than the other. So I'm going to start with the side that I have less room with. And I'm going to start at this intersection. So you're going to start at one of the intersections. You're not going to start from the middle. You're going to start from an intersection. And if you have these, if you have it cornered, you're just going to draw from where you cornered that spot. And I'm going to take and I'm going to draw a big, gentle arc up towards the corner of the card. Then I'm going to come next to it. I'm not going to start right where that one started from. I'm going to kind of come over a little bit, and I'm going to do another arc. And I might even start coming up the side of the body a little bit, do an arc. And I think I could fit one more in. So I don't want my arc to touch my shape. And I don't want it like super, super close. We're going to do something here, so leave yourself a little bit of space. But you don't need piles of space, but just leave yourself some space. And now I'm going to come up, and I'm going to, so this is like half of the wing. We're going to do the other half. So I'm going to come up, and I'm just bringing it up almost to my string line, or my border line that we drew at the beginning. And I'm going to make my way up the body a little bit more. And you could decide, you could change the arc so it arcs towards the body, or you could keep all of them kind of going the same direction. It doesn't matter. I think I am going to put one more little line in here. All right. So I'm going to do this big one just so you can really see what we're going to do. But you're going to do the same thing between each line. I'm going to start at the top of the line, of this line, and I'm going to draw an arc that goes inward to connect this line. And I'm going to come here, I'm going to do the same thing. And then the last one, we have to connect this to the body. So now I'm just going to draw that arc right down and stop right at the body. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same thing. And now we have a wing. Now this is a little lopsided. This guy needs another wing. So I started at this intersection for this side. So I'm going to go diagonally across and start at this intersection. So it's all still coming off of this big middle bit here. But now I'm going to basically go catty corner and do the same process. So however you arced your lines, like, and I would think about from, if you changed the direction, like if you went, turn this around, if you started going like off to your left and then when you went to the other side you arced it this way, use your first big line as your guide. Okay, so in my case all of my arcs are the same way, so it doesn't matter. So now when I flip it, I'm going to once again arc to my left, and that way it's going to be opposite of this wing. And you want your wings to be sort of even, but if one wing is a little bigger than the other, that's okay. It might end up being a little bigger just because you have a little more space. But I'm going to do the exact same process, so I'm just drawing these arcs up and away from the body. And since I kept all my arcs going the same direction, on the first wing, I'm going to do the same thing, even that out a bit, on the second wing. You can decide if you want all the same number of lines. You might not care. I personally don't care. But if that's something that you want to do, you could certainly make your wings super, super even. But I feel like this is like a little fantasy creature anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And here I'm just putting those arcs between the lines and connecting it to the body. Now, another optional embellishment, and again, if you're using color, I will sometimes do this with color and sometimes I don't. And I'll tell you how I decide is what colors I'm using. So if I'm using super dark colors, I don't bother with this. But if my wings are going to be lighter, then I will most likely do this. So I'm going to treat each panel of the wing separately. And I'm going to start, I don't know, maybe not even quite halfway up in that panel. And I'm going to draw a line that goes from the middle of the panel kind of down to the junction of the line in the body. And I'm going to put a few more in there. I call these gather marks. So even with color, this kind of adds to kind of the direction and how the wing connects in. You might have some panels where you could fit 4 in. By the way, in this case, I had a couple that can only fit 2 in. So there's no hard and fast rule, because once you're done, it really doesn't matter whether there's 2 or 4 or 3 in there. Because as you can see, it's just bringing the wing in. So this adds a little bit of dimension. And like I said, usually if I'm using a lighter color, if I'm coloring these in, I will do this. Unlike the body lines, which I only do if I'm doing black and white. And I'm just following the arcs. So if you change the direction of your arcs as you were drawing the lines, if you didn't keep them all the same direction like I did, then you can also change the direction of your gather lines. So if you're sticking with black and white, the final thing you're going to do, actually I am going to bring that claw out a little bit and make it a little less spindly looking. And then I'm going to fill in the claw. And you may want to do this if you're adding color too. You may just want this to be just a black claw. Okay, so there you have it. That's Draq. All right, so I am going to now shade this. So I've put my pen down and I'm picking up my sketch pencil and my tortillon. I'm gonna start with my sketch pencil. So the first thing I'm gonna work on is the body of the Draq. So I'm going to I'm just taking my sketch pencil. Now, it's depending on the softness. So this is an 8B, so this is a fairly soft sketch pencil. If you're using a Zentangle sketch pencil, those I believe are HBs, so they are a little harder. So I know that if I put a little bit down, this is going to create quite a bit of shade. So you're going to have to decide based on how soft your pencil is, how much you want to do. But all I did was just kind of color along the edges of my shape. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of shade outside of the curve. So think about like this one is a little higher than this one and so on and so forth. And then I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm putting even less along those spots. So you can already see just from that kind of how it's starting to pop up and pop off the card. So now I'm going to pick up my tortillon. I tend to put pencil down and blend as I go. I don't usually do all the pencil work and then pick up my tortillon, but some people prefer to do it that way. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm ignoring the shade in between, but I'm pulling the graphite up and over those lines that we drew to create the rounded body. Flip my card over and do the same thing on this side. And my goal is, and this is the nice thing about those lines, is this reminds us that if we have something that is rounded, it's going to be shaded along the sides, but then there's going to be a light streak where the light hits it. So this becomes our highlight. So the lines just kind of help create a guide for that. But we don't have to go just out to the edges of the lines and stop, which I've done right now, because before I go any further, I'm going to blend, and I'm keeping my tortillon pretty close to that line. So I'm just blending that. Just to see how that lays out. Now I want to do a little more with that highlight. So now I'm just going to take what's there on the card and what's on the edge of my tortillon. I'm not going to add any more graphite. And I'm just going to pull this out a little further. So as I pull this out, this is naturally getting lighter because it's got less graphite to work with. And if I see that there's like a harsh line, Then I just go back and blend it. And this is essentially in any Zentangle pattern that has like an orb or a rounded shape to it. This is a great way to create that highlight line. All right, so now we have the wings to deal with. So we're going to do a similar idea with the wings. I'm going to put my tortillon down. So I want to think about where these wings go into the body. Obviously, that's going to be the darkest part of the wing. And then out here is going to be, you know, bright or highlighted. So I am going to, and I tend to work in each panel. And you could see here, I'm putting quite a bit of graphite right along the base of the wing. And then the other thing I'm going to do is just very lightly pull a little bit of graphite up along the inside of the curves of the wing. And I'll do the same here before I put my pencil down. And now we're going to blend that out. So I'm going to start with the darkest bits. I'm going to ignore these lines up for just a second. But I'm following, just like I did with the body, I'm following those gather lines. So at first when I put all that graphite down, those gather lines started disappearing. But as you can see, as I blend this out, and I'm going to bring that up along the edge of the body a little bit too. As I blend it out, those lines just kind of deepen what I'm doing. So now I'm going to follow, blend out those lines of graphite that I put right up along the wing structures. And now with like a feather touch, I'm going along the top of kind of where the graphite is. So very feather touch, like very, very light touch. And that's just blending it out. So you can kind of see the before with just the graphite unblended, and then you have the after. And by doing that feather touch and kind of being a little vague about like where that shadow begins and ends, it gives the line or the wing a little bit of a transparent feel to it. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So first I'm starting with those, what I call the gather lines along the body. And I'm pulling that graphite up over them. And then right along the edge of the body as well. And then I start kind of following the arcs. And deciding, is there someplace where I want to pull the graphite out a little bit more? And when I'm happy with that, then I go through with that feather touch again. There you have it. If you want to, the final thing that you could do, if you're not adding to this, this works great as just a monotangle. It, you know, it has so much character to it. You could just do this and call it a day. You could also use this as a centerpiece and tangle other patterns around it. But since I'm done, I'm actually just going to blend out the border and actually make more of a border with that. And then final touches, I'm going to cast a little bit of a shadow on the card. So I'm not going to do a lot here, but I've done a little bit of shadow like on the inside edge here from the wing out to the claw. And then using what's on the tortillon, I'm kind of coming around and doing the wing, but I'm not adding much more graphite than what I already have, because there's plenty on the card to work with. And then I'm going to turn around and do the same thing. So I start, when I think about casting shadows on like the backdrop or whatever the whatever pattern is being layered on top of something else, I tend to work with going inside a curve. To my eye, that makes the most sense. And you can see here, as I run out of graphite on my tortillon, I just go back and pick a little bit more up from here. And the more you go over the graphite with your tortillon, the darker it'll get. So if you really want a very deep shadow, so I'm just going to go and kind of touch up right where the wings meet the body. I'm just going over that again. There we go. So now with the border and with it coming up off of the card a little bit, creates a bit of a three-dimensional look. And of course, our final step here is to initial or put our chop on the card. So I'm going to find a spot to do that. And my chop is my nickname, which is Cat. And I think I'm just going to put, and I kind of smash the letters together to make my chop. So I'm just going to put this up here on the wing, but you can put it wherever you want. And there is our black and white version of Draq. Okay, so now we are going to do the color version. So here is Draq again. You can see I did the gather lines on the wings. The wing panels on this card are a little wider than the one that I did in black and white, if you just sat through that. So I was able to put more gather lines in there, and I also, unlike the first one I did, you could see here I changed the direction of the arc. So you could kind of see this was my first line, and I did all this side going that direction in terms of the arc, and then the other direction I actually curved towards the body. So you can kind of see how that looks a little different. And I am going to make my body purple, and my wings are going to be pinky purple, and then the claws are going to be an olive green. So I have selected, I'm using Prismacolors, but any soft colored pencil will do. Crayolas, you will not, something like Crayolas or Rose Art, you won't get quite the blend that I'm going to get. You really need, these are nice soft wax. I have, if you're using Prismacolors, I have Violet and Parma Violet. I have, what color is this? This is Hot Pink. And I have Lime Peel, which is a great green, especially if you do a lot of nature art. And then I have my trusty white pencil. I also keep my little pencil sharpener handy, because you really want, even though we aren't going to be doing a lot of like on the tip coloring, you still want to keep your points fairly sharp so you can kind of get into like the nooks and crannies and not color over. So very quickly, when you are working with colored pencils, we'll just use the back of this card. There are a couple different ways to create color. You can keep your pencil on its side, and you can see that creates a very open color. You could see some of the cards still, and you don't push very hard. You can push hard and you're still going to get a porous color like this. You could bring the card, I say it's like kind of half mast. So now I'm not all the way up on the tip, but I'm definitely not down on the side. And you can see where I'm holding the pencil. I'm like up a ways. So like we're at like 3/4 of the way up. And when I color, and again, not applying a lot of pressure, but notice the difference in color, still using the same pencil. And then finally up on its tip with some pressure. This is where, and on a Zentangle card, it has a lot of texture, so you're still going to see a tiny bit of the card. But this is a way to create 3 different colors with one pencil without using white, because you have the very light to the medium to the dark. So if you don't have the colors that I'm using, if you only have, say, one purple or one blue, this is a way that you can create 3 separate colors. All right, so I'm actually going to start, but since I have 2 colors, I'm going to use them. I'm going to focus on the body of my Draq. Before I do that, so when I'm tangling traditionally with just black and white, and so the graphite and ink, I don't erase. However, I am going to erase, and I'm not going to do an awful lot. I'm just going to try to get rid of some of the graphite on my card, because it will blend with your colored pencils and potentially create a color that you aren't aiming for. I'm leaving my border line, and if it's outside of my Draq, I don't really care, because I'm probably going to go back and also add a little bit of graphite to this card when I'm done. But whatever I'm going to be adding color to, I'm going to get rid of some, if not all, of the graphite. So I'm going to start with my light purple on its side. So this is my Parma Violet, so my lighter color. And I am actually going to just very lightly color in each segment. I'm treating each segment individually. I'm trying not to color over the pen line. It probably wouldn't make a difference, but I'm still not going to do it. You can see here I have my pencil on its side. I'm doing little like rounded strokes. If I don't completely fill this in, it does not matter. We're going to come back and do more with it. This is just kind of, think about this as like the base coat of color that we're doing. All right, and I'm not touching the claws, so I'm only doing these rounded segments. Now, still with the same pencil, I'm not picking up my dark just yet. So I'm going to bring my black and white card in here for us to look at. I'm aiming for something very similar in that it's going to be dark along the edges and it's going to have this highlight down the middle. But the highlight in this case isn't going to be perfectly white because we have color here. So if you think about how the light would hit the shape, it will kind of tell you where you want that highlight to be, but you also still want some color in there. And so that's why we did this very light version. So using this, still the light purple, in my case, the Parma Violet, I'm going to start kind of modeling this card. So move that out of the way. And I'm going to bring the pencil up to like that 3/4. And I'm going to pull from the edge, kind of about 1/3 of the way in. I'm using like an arc in my pencil stroke. Actually, I'm going to go in just a little further because I don't want my highlight to be I don't want my highlight to be too fat. But you can also see here I've created a line. Now I still worked in each segment individually, but if you take them all together, there's a line there. Flip my card over, do the same thing. When I do this, I do tend, you can see I start from one edge and work my way down instead of like when we were tangling, I was working from the middle out. This just helps me create that line that I just talked about. It's just better for me visually. There is no hard and fast rule though. And before I stop, I am going back on both sides. And I'm still at that kind of 3/4, but I'm pushing a little harder. And right at that pen line, I'm deepening that. Now, the one thing I'm going to do differently than I did in the black and white is originally when I did this, I added a little bit of graphite at the segments. I'm not going to do that with the color just yet. I will, but I'm going to wait. So now I'm going to pick up my darker purple and use that. I'm going to start by taking the pencil and just going right along the edge of each body segment, still using the arc shape. And we're going to come back with the lighter color in a minute and start the blend and then use white to kind of finish it out. But now I'm really using, and I have my pencil not quite up on its tip, but pretty close. I'm pushing hard, and you can see that I'm creating a gradient. It's not a very smooth gradient right now, but we're going to fix that in just a second. And I'm keeping this towards the edge. I'm not bringing this dark color in very far, at least not yet. And I don't think I'm going to need to. And now I'm also, while I have it, I'm going to bring the pencil back down. I'm still using that darker color, but I'm using this pencil to kind of use to create that shadow between the segments. All right, so now back to the lighter purple. I'm going to take my pencil at that 3/4, do big circles and kind of fill in the spaces. So what I'm doing here is just blending it out. And I'm going to take a look at it and say, do I have a highlight? And I don't really have a highlight just yet. So now I'm going back with my pencil almost up on its tip. And I'm going to bring in the purple a little bit more. All right, and then the final thing, and you could do this one of two ways. I'm going to use white, but you could use this pink actually could work as well. But I'm going to use white because it's going to be a little more dramatic. It'll be easier to see it on the camera. I'm going to decide where I want that highlight to be. And I'm going to start again at the top. And this is going to create like a shmeary line. And I'm going to follow that S curve that we originally made. And then what I'm going to do is, just so it's not so obvious, like, because I have this shmeary line and then I have a little less going on with just the purples, I am going to take the white and very lightly kind of go over the lighter parts. So this is a more subtle highlight. And then I could go back and pushing really hard. And even come back with the purple and just bring it right up to that highlight line. So what I'm doing here, and this is why you want a soft colored pencil for this, is I'm just layering color on to get the effect I want. Now for all colored pencils, it does not matter what brand you use. For all colored pencils, there comes a kind of a point of diminishing returns where you can keep slapping color on and it's not going to make any difference. The nice thing about pencils like Prismacolor is it takes a while to get to that point, so you can fuss with it for a little bit if you want to. Now, if you don't want to be bothered with highlights and lowlights, but you want a purple Draq body, you can certainly just take purple and color it in, and it looks super cool. But this is also why I don't do the body lines, because as soon as I start using that darker purple, this would just kind of get lost in there anyway. All right, so the claw is going to be super easy. I'm going to take my green and I'm going to just color it in. I'm not going to do an awful lot to this. I have my green up on its point, so I'm just like really filling that in nice and dark. If you want to try to create a little bit of a highlight, the first thing you got to do, just be aware if you're using a white pencil, so there's now a bunch of purple on the tip. It's hard to see on the camera, but there is some purple, so I just have another card, a piece of scrap paper, something like that, just to kind of take that color off because I don't want to blend a bunch of purple in. And I just sharpened my white pencil to get a nice good point. And I'm going to kind of along just one edge, I'm going to put a little bit of white in. It's subtle. It's hard to see on the camera. It's actually kind of hard to see even in person, but there is kind of a subtle highlight there. And since I did one side, I'll do the other. And I'll clean the green off. All right, let's get to the wings. So the wings, I'm going to use the dark purple first. So I'm doing something a little different than what I did for the body. What I'm going to do with this dark purple is I'm going to, using at like that 2/3 of the way, so not all the way up on its tip, not completely on its side though. I'm just doing like little rounded like coloring strokes right along the edge of the body. And I'm just bringing these up just a tiny bit up the lines of the wing. And I'm turning around and do this side just to get it done. And then this is going to be it for the dark purple. Unless I need to deepen it right along the body when I'm done. And I'm also going to do something a little different with the white too. So before I pick up the lighter purple, I'm going to grab my white and I'm going to decide where I want my highlight to be. And I'm going to, and you're not going to be able to really see this on the camera, unfortunately, because it's, you know, basically white on a cream card. But what I'm doing is I'm deciding where I want my highlight to be. And I've created like a boomerang shape of white. So these two panels, you can kind of see it. These two panels have kind of a wider bit, and then these two panels I kind of tapered into almost like that, a claw shape. So it looks like a boomerang. It doesn't have to be a perfect boomerang, but what this is doing is this is where I want the light to kind of hit the wings. So I'm thinking about where I want my highlight to be. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and then I can put my white down for a while. Now the panels are a little different on this side, so I'm doing the highlight a little different, and then I'm putting a little extra white. I'm going a little further around. And again, you can kind of see that on the camera. All right, I am now picking up my Permaviolet, and I've given it a little bit of sharpening for good measure. And where the lines are, I have it on its side, but where the lines are, I'm dipping into that dark and I'm pulling it out. I'm applying a little more pressure than I will when I get to the edge. And now I'm putting it right on its side. And as I do this, you can kind of see where that white is. It gets a little shimmery looking as I go over it. And as I pull this out, I don't care if I take it all the way out to the edge. So some of the purple is going to go all the way out there and some of that is not. And I'm going to do something with that, so that's fine. And then let's do this side. So again, on its side, but applying a little more pressure, dipping into that dark. And because it's soft wax, it's going to pull and blend with that dark purple. And then pencil on its side. Out towards the edge. I mean, the big goal here is not to go past the edge, but if you don't hit the edge, that's fine too. If you aren't using, so I have pink, and pink is going to play a bit in how I finish this wing. If you're just using just purple or just whatever color, just one color, then you may want to actually try to get it out to the edge of the wing. All right, so now I'm going to grab my pink. Pink is on its side. And I am just going to, this is where I'm going to fill in the edge, but I'm also pulling it back into the purple and over that white. And I'll probably end up using some white to really finish out that highlight. The thing that I don't want to do though, so you can see here on the part that I've done, you can see there's pink, there's purple, and there's patches of just pink and just purple, and patches like here where it's kind of mixed together. I am not pushing so hard to actually blend those colors. I want to be able to see both colors kind of represented in that space, because that will make the wing look more translucent. But I am kind of coming down and pulling up some of the darker bits. So here's the wing with the pink. And here's the wing with just the purple. Let's do the other side with the pink. The big thing I do here is I start at the edge and kind of try to work my way back down into the purple, instead of starting with the purple and pulling it out to the edge with the pink. It's a subtle difference, but it will keep you from blending the two together so much, if you think about that direction. All right, so the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with my white now. You can see here that there's kind of a shimmery edge to it. It's subtle. So now I'm going to take the white and I'm just going over where the white was already. I might go a little wider than I did before, and I'm going to actually embrace the fact that we're going from kind of a more opaque area to a more shimmery area. So this isn't going to be the bright highlight that is along the body. This is just creating a little bit of texture and a subtle difference for the rest of the wing. And that's purely optional. Just creates something a little different on the wing. And that's about as close as you're going to get for like a watercolor effect with your just straight up colored pencils. So the final thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab my graphite and my tortillon, and if you watched, let's get the rest of the little bits from the colored pencil off. If you watched how I shaded this in black and white, I'm going to do something very similar now with this color. And the thing is, be careful not to get your graphite into your colored pencil, because especially the waxy pencils, it'll kind of, it just kind of makes a mess with the graphite. So since there's not a lot of graphite on the card, this is the one thing that's going to be a little different from when I did the black and white. So when I did the black and white, I just used what I put down here and just kind of carried it around. Since I don't have a lot on here, I'm putting a tiny bit of graphite in the kind of in each of the little arcs for the wings as I go around the body. And I'm going to very carefully blend this away from the body. So in other words, I don't want to pull any color into this if I can help it. And you can kind of use, like, this is the before side and this is, or sorry, this is the before side and then this is the after side. So it's subtle, but it kind of pops it up off the card. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, starting with the claw, putting down quite a bit of graphite in that corner, and then a tiny bit into each little arc of the wing. And it doesn't even have to like go the entire length, because I'm going to blend that out, and if I have too much graphite down, then I'm going to end up with more of a shadow than I want. But since Zentangle is abstract, we don't have to really worry about like light source and all of that. We can just decide we want it to pop up off the card. So by creating a shadow on the pattern, it just pops up. I don't have to worry that like the light's coming in a certain way, but this highlight certainly kind of makes it seem like the light is coming right in at the top. So what I've just done makes sense anyway, but you don't have to worry about that if you don't want to. And then the final thing I'm going to do, just like I did in the black and white, I'm going to use my tortillon and blend the border. And take a moment to appreciate this one. We're going to add our chop to this, the very final step. And I'm trying to figure out the best place to put it. I'll keep turning it around until I figure it out. I think kind of up here at the tip of this wing makes sense. And finally, let's create a mosaic. So I actually have two. So I can create a tiny little mosaic here. I hope that you enjoyed this draw with me and had fun with a little bit of a Halloween spin on Zentangle. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so you'll know when I drop a future one. Happy tangling!